Where were you when you first heard the name Kwame Nkrumah?
Wow, I grew up with it.
Really?
Because by the time I grew up with it, because as I told you, where our shop was, what we call the market circle, my father had become more or less adopted by a very rich man who owned the whole place called Skek. He was a very successful fisherman and in other business, in real estate business, one way or the other. And therefore, we had, in fact, grown up thinking that we were an extension of the family, we were part of the family, right? And that is why Auntie Vero, the one who is in London, refers to Yao and all of us as brothers and all that, and she's always constant. Because we all grew up. The father, who was Kofi Bacha, was a revolutionary Nkrumah, later on the editor of The Spark. Right. The mother was the daughter of this rich man. And Nkrumah, when he came, when he was in UGC, he came abroad from, when he came by boat, lodged with that family, right? Because if you remember, it was the rich merchants who really financed the UGCC. So the Skek, this old man Skek, and later on Pa Grant, who was also in secondary, you know, so they were the ones, and that's how I was so young to know, but to meet him, and therefore the name Nkrumah and what he stood for, especially when a newspaper was established by that family, and it is Saki Skek, later on a minister.
It's called The Spark, you said. Is that the newspaper?
The Spark was what Nkrumah set up in Accra, but then there was I think there was, at the time, I'm not too sure whether it was even before Nkrumah came, the brother of the one of the sons of Saki Skek, Saki Skek, who later on became a lawyer, and set up this newspaper in which Auntie Ifua and all the others were contributors. The name of Nkrumah and what he stood for and all that, we grew up with. You know, we grew up. And this whole idea of Pan-Africanism and the African, you know, capable of doing things, and, you know, we should study hard and take over the world, and we are not inferior in any way and all this, we grew up with it.
Just on Young Pioneer, what does that mean? What are you subscribing to as a Young Pioneer?
Young Pioneer movement was in fact political indoctrination, basically. You know, you're told what Nkrumahism is. You're told what Pan-Africanism is. You go march, you do sports, you do all sorts of things that will, you know, give and build self-confidence in you. You were reciting, you know, the national pledge, the national anthem, what is Nkrumahism, what is this, what is that, what is colonialism, what is that, and Nkrumah sayings and all that we were reciting, right? Some of us were reciting like parrots, but actually, eventually, when you recite this to yourself and you're about 15, 16, you start asking yourself, what does it mean? You know, and all that. So it influenced a whole lot of people in my generation, you know. And as I was just getting at this, I'm brought, in some cases, a rift within the families, right? Because if you have a family, like my father, for example, adored Nkrumah, but had some sort of a bit of misgivings about the teachings, that Nkrumah never dies, Nkrumah is our leader, Nkrumah and all this and that. You know, as a pastor, as a preacher, you know, a strong spiritualist, these are things which were incongruent with his, you know.
Yeah, there was no humility.
Yes, you know, in sort of, and you know, it jolted everybody, jolted families and all that. And in some cases, I don't know whether it's an abuse or it was part of the system. People were being made to love their country and Nkrumah more than their parents, more than their family. Now, upon second thought, I realize it's not a bad thing, really, because we didn't have what you had in British systems, in which values, strong values, were taught, you know, on the basis of being honest, love your country, you know, this sort of thing. We didn't have a country to love, really. We have tribes, probably. We have parents to love. We have all sort of things. So that if your parent or your tribe is misbehaving, unless you are passionately in love with the country, which is probably mythical, you know, you can't see that your parents are wrong.
So what he did was actually was even more than revolutionary, because what he did essentially was stitch together a narrative for Ghana to be able to believe in, subscribe to, and actually feel, take ownership of, which didn't exist before. So it's in a way, it's a job, and anyway, an impossible job, which he did.
And all this crammed in 6-7 years. He was setting himself up to fail. It's impossible. But you see, when it was removed, now, I give this credit to him, that by the time he left, when he said that, long after he's gone, the seed that he has sown in Africa will continue to bloom and all sorts of things, we didn't believe it. But now I realize that, in fact, it was probably, how do I put it, presumptuous on his part to have said and to believe that. Now I realize it was true, because we are 60 plus. But we do remember all these heady days that there were certain things that we learned. And therefore, some people in my generation take part of it, all of it, or some of it. Those who didn't even have the reflections that we had, the benefit of political science and all that later on, and traveling around and understanding the rest of the world, at least kept some of these seeds. And occasionally, we were reminded that, things were wrong. So that by the time Nkrumah left, which was 66, yes. The generation we're looking at now, in this country and in certain parts of Africa, are generations who occasionally will come back to this and say, Pan-Africanism, there's no way. That is the only thing. The love of country is because we don't have it, that our countries are not going well. Condoning evil things that will benefit family and benefit tribe. That is nepotism and tribalism, right? So you go back and you say, the things that we were taught, which was said by our parents to be sacrilegious and blasphemous, in fact, are the very things that we need to build our countries with. Okay? We can never build this country when we don't accept or know with deep conviction there are certain values upon which our countries and Africa have to be built. Right? That if you love your family, if you love your parents when they are wrong, you have to tell them that they are wrong. That if they are stealing state money, even if it is to be able to send you to school, they are stealing state money. Right? That if they are corrupt, it is your duty to report. How are we going to bring up a whole new generation now that have this lacking, have had this lacking in their lives for nearly, I don't know how many years, and all they think about is they survive and their children would survive, and they always believe that, in fact, they are shortchanged because people who have had access to political power serve themselves and their families.
So if looking at Kwame Nkrumah, it seems that, he had 6 years as president of Ghana. What were the top 3 lessons that he taught Africa, or even the world?
What is clear in his mind is that the African has to build self-confidence and has to accept that he is a human being like all the others. And to do that, he needs to take control of the monopoly of the means of coercion, which is politics. The state should be owned by the African himself. In other words, we have to arrogate to ourselves the right to make decisions. So we needed to be independent. We need to achieve political independence. The second, I think, which was clear, that, listen, we should cast aside all these mysticisms and superstitions and all that. I'm not saying we should be ungodly. I'm not saying we should not believe in God and all this. I am saying that we should believe that our future will be forged by us and by dint of hard work and self-application. You should set goals. We should organize ourselves to have the goals we can achieve over a certain period, and organize ourselves to pursue the goals and organize our resources so that we can achieve them. It's as simple as that. In other words, we should be the center of our lives. If Europe has developed, God didn't develop it for them. They put themselves at the center. So we needed to do that. In the very first time that Nkrumah started his political sort of his life as in governance is the importance, the primacy of education. And education for all. His expanded education program was for everybody to go to school. Right? So the primacy of education, that everybody should have access, even willy-nilly should go to school. It's a fundamental right that you don't need to exercise. It has to be exercised by the state for you. So that is important. The importance, the primacy of education. The fourth is the importance of science. The importance of science. If Nkrumah ventured into nuclear science, if he established Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, you'd go through his books. Nkrumah believed that science was the future. We should believe in science. Right? The fifth element is that he said this in a letter to the American president. I think it was Lincoln. That we know where we're going, we know what we're doing. We do not want to build a state in which a small minority benefits from the resources that the country has at the detriment of the vast majority. In other words, the resources and that country as a country belongs to all of us, and we should work hard to give equal opportunity to all. In spite of that, at every moment, we should work against having a minority, an oligarchical society, where the gap between the rich and the poor is increasing. It should be our obsession. If we are poor, then we're going to be poor, all of us. But if we're going to be rich, then we have to use it to lift everybody up. That is the only way we can survive. The last, and probably would have been the most important for him, because that's what he's remembered for, is that Ghana can make it a whole, as alone. It is the whole of Africa that we are talking about. It is not Ghana. It's the whole of Africa. And for that matter, it is the black race. We have suffered too long as a race for over, almost 1,000 years.
Even more.
It is important that we understand that we have to work together to be able to move forward. So it is not Ghana that matters. When we concentrate on Ghana, it is because it's of strategic importance. There's a certain state you can concentrate on a base to be able to spring forward. But we are talking about the whole Africa and the black race. That is what we learned from Nkrumah.
So it's political power. It is being able to control essentially your own self-identity and that of your group. It is about education, both in terms of broadening the base of education for all, focusing on science and technology to keep you competitive, and making sure that there is unity at the heart of it. So based on those 5 principles, looking to today in terms of Pan-Africanism, look what's happened in the world. You've got the rise of this Black Matters movement in America. You've got the whole immigration or migration of Africans, many of them which are drowning, to Europe. You've got Africans often seen as a lower class in Asia. You've still got slavery happening in the Middle East of black people.
Even in certain parts of Africa.
Oh, even in certain parts of Africa. What would you add to those 5 key points that Kwame Nkrumah put forward in hindsight that could have given us a better result or different results now?
Having said all this, my personal view of what we're going through is that we can't do this alone. It is good encouraging the African. It is good waking up the African. It is good letting the African operate better for himself and all that. But this has to go into everybody's psyche. Through science, through interactions, through building on the experiences of the past. Civilizations that have been built, including the black man civilization, over the past, this thing. The human race has amassed a great deal of power that would allow the human race to move forward, create a better future for all, or recede and annihilate itself. So the lesson of being united for a common purpose of the success of the human race enjoins all of us. And that is a responsibility that accrues most of all to people who call themselves leaders of this world. Now, and to those of us, or a generation that is coming, who are supporting or are emulating or wants to aspire to become leaders in future, there is no way that any race, that any section of the world will be able to succeed without the rest of all of us coming together. So it's a black man's fight, yes, but that is for black man's corner. But it's a world fight for all of us. I'm not sure whether Nkrumah had the chance to bring this forward, but I think after him, the world has known a lot more than he knew. His concern was leaving the black man behind, which would have been a loss to the entire world. Our concern should be that, yes, it is indeed a loss for the whole world. It is not only a loss for the Africans. So the whole world has a responsibility to work together with all of us to be able to enhance the future of our own planet.
But thank you for sharing those. And also thank you for sharing aspects of your life and where the family meets those milestones.
I could have even given you a life history of the family where we migrated from and all that.